This video will explore the 11 celestial objects that primarily make up the crystal sphere of Greyhawk. From Earth-like planets to giant spinning space disks, if you wanted to explore new worlds and seek out new life and new civilizations, you're in luck. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Describe. Describe offers finely crafted box text for your role-playing game adventures. When you're flying through wild space searching for the exact wording for your planet that is eaten by a giant space whale, well, they have you covered. More virtual tabletop integration, scenes sorted by useful tags to find out what you need. Check out Describe today by going to describe.com/Jordan with a silent PH in the middle. And thanks again, Describe. Hello everybody, Jordan here. The PH is silent. Greyspace is the crystal sphere for the Greyhawk campaign setting, and it is centered around the planet Oerth. Greyhawk is Gary Gygax's original setting and was expanded for the use with the Spelljammer campaign setting. The three main fantasy settings of 2nd edition D&D that got a Spelljammer integration were Greyhawk, Dragonlance, and the Forgotten Realms. This supplement released for 2nd edition D&D came out after the Forgotten Realms realm space and the Dragonlance Kryn space, which defined the planetoids for all of these settings. Settings like Eberron came after Spelljammer ended and were not configured or plugged into Spelljammer. Now, other settings were kept out of Spelljammer for reasons that were usually specific to that setting. Ravenloft, for example, the domains of dread, they're kind of their own thing, and so it made sense to not create a planet Ravenloft. But hell, I'd play a game called Planet Ravenloft, let's be very clear. Dark Sun came out after Spelljammer, and TSR decided to keep that setting separated from Spelljammer. However, in later Spelljamming printings, they did hint that Dark Sun could possibly be found through the phlogiston, simply saying that the information to get there is not public knowledge. It might be reachable. It might be a closely guarded secret by some sorcerer king. However, when pressed, TSR's position is that the Dark Sun campaign setting and the world of Athas is a closed crystal sphere and cannot be reached by Spelljammers. But that's not really fun, so do what you want in your Spelljammer game. Have your space gnome overthrow the sorcerer kings of Athas. Now, Greyspace has one major difference from other known crystal spheres, is that its main orbital attractor is the planet Oerth, which is the main planet of the setting. Now, this means that the center of the Greyspace solar system is that planet. The planet is not bigger than many of the other objects in the solar system, so how it keeps everything in orbit is unknown. Perhaps magic is the orbital attractor, or some weird wild space anomaly. The Greyspace crystal sphere is 16 billion miles in diameter. As with other entities, they orbit Oerth, and so they're technically considered moons instead of planets. But ancient astronomers of Greyhawk divided up the closer celestial bodies and decided that they were moons, and the further reaching ones, those are considered planets. Even though that's incorrect, we're gonna go with it. The definition really comes down to anything past the sun is considered a planet, and all of those things before are considered moons. The outside surface of Greyspace crystal sphere is highly reflective. As you approach it in the phlogiston, you'll see a duplicate ship flying at you, approaching you, which is just your reflection. Now, on closer inspection, the sphere has the same luminosity as polished steel. It can't really be scratched or dented or, for all purposes, it's indestructible. The inside surface of the sphere is dark. The walls are black and non-reflective. They seem to absorb all light. And stars can be seen from the planets in Greyspace, but they're not stars that you see up in the night sky. They're not stars by Earth's definition anyway. These really are diamonds in the sky, and kind of just like that, they're huge glowing crystals that are embedded in the dark walls of the crystal sphere. The largest of these star gems are about 20 miles across, with the majority being around 1 mile in diameter. They glow and they can be seen from Oerth at night. Now, the source of their energy is unknown, but most have assumed the positive energy plane. They do not radiate heat, but if you get within 100 feet of them, you'll hit a boundary where the temperature instantly jumps to several thousand degrees. Now, this barrier can't be seen, but it can be felt, so if you reach your hand out, you'll return with a charred hand. And it feels like a good way for the Greyhawk Mafia to dispose of a few loose ends, if you know what I mean. Now, if a player character lands here, you have to make a con save with a -3 penalty, or you will be instantly vaporized. If you succeed, you suffer 4d10 damage, but in 5e mechanics, I feel like that should be a lot higher. For every round that you stay within this boundary, you'll take an additional 4d10 damage. And this makes me want to put a dwarven forge nearby that utilizes the heat to refine ore and build magical weapons. Starting at the very center and moving outward, Oerth is the center of this galaxy. It's an Earth-like body with 24-hour days and 365 days a year. How convenient. It is home to many cities and different civilizations. A few spelljamming ports exist in some of the major cities here, Greyhawk being the most well-known, and this is frankly a very detailed setting within Dungeons & Dragons, but in relation to Spelljammer, it is a brief place to stop and resupply. The next planetoid is Kull, a spherical Earth body and considered one of the 2 moons of Oerth. It is the smallest planet in the system, and it's a dead world, a world with no atmosphere. It's covered in craters and volcanoes. It's devoid of anything useful on the surface. It might have been a breathable atmosphere at some point, but an unknown cataclysm removed the air. And if you visit, you'll have to provide your own air. Now, a small bubble of air follows you in wild space, but on a planet, I would think that your air envelope would leave you to become part of the planet's non-existent atmosphere. So you'll have to bring your scuba gear or, well, your self-contained atmospheric breathing apparatus, a SCABA. Now, at one time in the past, Kull was home to a sophisticated civilization, and you can find complex yet deserted buildings on and within the planet. From the architecture, we can surmise that the people were large bipedal humanoids, but no skeletons have ever been found. 7 major cities have been discovered, and a few outposts here and there. Now, despite all of that, the Drow live on this planet in secret underground tunnels and caverns within Kull. The Empress Priestess Lilith rules the Drow with her Council of Advisors and Council of Priests. I assume they import breathable air into their caverns somehow. Next is Raenei, which I might be pronouncing wrong. It is also known as Luna. Raenei has an atmosphere very similar to Oerth, but has less overall oxygen. Liquid water can be found on the surface and allows for clouds and weather that is similar to Oerth. The surface is mostly dry land, with 30% of it being ocean. You'll find some grasslands, desert, mountains, and more. There's no sentient life forms that come from this moon, but there is a healthy array of plant life. Now, some plants that appear are identical to those on Oerth. They're so identical that a major theory is that many of the plants from Oerth must have been transplanted to Raenei or vice versa very long ago. Since the advent of spelljamming, the moon has become home to many types of creatures. Monstrous creatures such as purple worms and ankhegs, along with a dozen black and green dragons live here. You may also run into pirates or space settlers of various kinds. Third on our list is Liga, or the Sun. It is a spherical fire body that contains an inner core of molten metals and flammable materials that burn eternally, but are never consumed. Others believe that it is a central gate to the plane of fire that keeps this sun burning. And if you ever make physical contact with the core, you will suffer 45d6 worth of damage per round. Now, the fire is considered magical, which bypasses any resistance spells or magic items that would provide you resistance. Now, from space, looking closely, there are these many round blue spots that cover the surface, and they appear and disappear. They're lakes of water that are roughly 10 miles across, that at the center of each of them is a gateway to the plane of water, and they come and go, but why they appear at all is a mystery. Liga is home to many fire beast creatures who probably migrated there from the plane of fire. After the sun is a very large asteroid field known as the Grinder, which is a great name, right? A dense field of rock with pieces ranging from 100 miles in diameter to the size of a golf ball. The shape of this isn't a ring or a torus, which is what you might think. Rather, it's a locked spherical ball of asteroids that go around Oerth. Now, every spelljamming vessel going to and from Oerth and the crystal sphere, the wall, you have to navigate through this obstacle. Pirates and some predatory radiant dragons hang out here to snatch up prey as they slow down to carefully navigate the hazard. Its origins are unknown, perhaps a planet once, perhaps a blessing of protection from the gods. Some of the larger asteroids have settlements on them where you can stop and ask for a guide or just directions to get safely through the grinder. Idyll is a massive spherical air world around 100,000 miles in diameter. Now, for reference, our Earth is just under 8,000 miles in diameter, and Jupiter is only 86,000 miles in diameter. Idyll has no solid core and really should just be considered a large concentration of breathable atmosphere. There is an invisible shell that prevents gases from escaping, but objects such as ships can pass right through easily. Now, the air currents are mild and massive storms are rare. Despite not having a core, it does have a gravity plane, which is located at the center of mass, so perhaps something is holding this all together. Again, magic. Now, anything that falls remains in terminal velocity until it hits the center, and then it's flung up the other way, only to fall backwards again. Within the planetoid are 20,736 bodies of earth, fire, and water each. Chunks of rock, balls of fire, and teardrop-shaped masses of water that really work more like a condensed rainstorm than a bubble of water. Dragons make their home in Idyll, many, many dragons. Next is another massive air body named Gnibil. Similar in structure to Idyll, with a diameter of 96,000 miles, they are often called sister planets. However, where Idyll is blue and beautiful, Gnibil is dark red in color. Where Idyll is pleasant and calm, Gnibil is turbulent and extreme. Instead of intelligent dragons and other life, Gnibil is home to an extremely large population of undead. The upper clouds are made up of acids and sulfides, very poisonous and corrosive if inhaled. The clouds will also eat away at the ship that flies through them. These destructive clouds are really only 500 yards thick, so you could potentially fly through them with minimal damage. On the other side is a world of storms and darkness. It is a cold world with no solid core and gravity that is a little bit stronger than Idyll's, but it behaves very much the same way. Elemental bodies of earth and ice orbit the center and inflict damage to anything that they strike. One of the larger earth motes is home to a port, which explorers call Deathwatch or Necros. Now, this place is home to several thousand undead, and it is ruled by a warrior lich named Samanda. Next is an elliptical water body named Kanartha. The planetoid is made up of a salt ocean that is smooth and flat. There's no islands or other land, but there are two deep earthen bodies that are located deep under the ocean, and these orbit around a central point on opposite ends, which gives the water its elliptical shape. There are molds and plankton, shrimp, fish, all the way up to large sentient creatures. There are mer people that live here, as well as Sahagwin, who have formed kingdoms on this planetoid. After that is Ginsel, a crescent-shaped earth body looking like a cookie with a large bite taken out of it. The two crescent points are north and south, and it rotates around that axis running through these poles. So because of this, the planetoid looks wobbly as it travels through wild space. Now, Ginsel has a breathable atmosphere with a pleasant climate. However, there's an area known as the Brink, where it got bitten off, that there are high winds and lightning storms. Now, people live on this planetoid. Humanoids from all over have made a home here, and there are oceans, and it really is a normal, healthy planet, just with a large bite taken out of it. There are a lot of resources that come and leave Ginsel. The merchants and traders here are known throughout the Spelljammer setting. Borka is an Earth cluster. It's not exactly a planet. It's really a collection of several thousand rocks, and all of those rocks share an atmosphere bubble. It originally was a single earthen body populated by goblins, kobolds, and orcs. And one day, as history says, an elven ship, a man-o'-war, landed and drew the attention of the goblinoids. The elves were frightened by the goblinoids, because they're goblins, I guess, and the elves lashed out with weapons, which angered the goblins, who then did turn into an angry mob of goblins and attacked. They swarmed the ship and broke it, killing the crew. Now, though, the goblins of Borka knew that there was life elsewhere. When other ships arrived, they would interact with them and attempt to gain spelljamming technology. Once acquired, they left and attempted a huge attack against the elven Greyspace fleet. Now, the elves were caught off guard, and with the help of the elven gods and an extra dimensional magic that they were able to cast a spell that split the crust of Borka apart like an eggshell. So the planet was shattered, and the Borka of today are those rocky fragments. Second to last is Greela, which is another Earth cluster world. It is larger than Borka, and it actually is made up of several thousand planetoids that share one large air bubble. Each planet has its own gravity, and the planetoids never really crash into one another, each on a very careful orbit. Nobody knows if Greela was originally a single planet or if it has always been this way. Now, Greela is home to many types of plants, but no animals. Foreign birds, fish, and insects have been introduced to the planet, and they have thrived. A group of elves here have taken to one of the planets within Greela, calling it their Forest of the Stars. Giants have taken another one to live on, and there is also a dwarven mining colony on another. Now, the final planet of Greyspace is called the Spectre, which is actually a flat disk about 100 miles in diameter and 10 miles thick. It is basically a giant coin, and it rotates on a horizontal axis looking like a tossed coin, also called the Wink, as it winks out of existence when horizontal with Oerth. It has an atmosphere almost exactly like that of Oerth, with slight gravity fluctuations due to its shape. The Spectre is devoid of life, but it can support it, so why it has none is kind of a mystery. Spacefaring races have set up outposts and trading centers on the Spectre, and even some military outposts from the Elven Imperial Navy. Now, the best part of Spectre is that the gnomes created a base near the north face edge where they were testing hot air balloons, and they bred giant space hamsters. The hamsters escaped and destroyed most of that installation. The gnomes did rebuild the outpost, and they named it What Is Left After the Tragic Events of Several Years Ago. Great name. Now, aside from these planetoids, there are some other astronomical entities floating around. If you want to have Greyspace adventures, there are various spacefaring companies that make their home in Greyspace, which would be a great opportunity to get quests. Most of this video's details were pulled from the Greyspace Spelljammer supplement that was created for 2nd edition. If you're interested, I'll put a link to the PDF in the doobly-doo down below. Thank you again, Describe, for sponsoring this video, so be sure to check out them. And I've got a weekly podcast called The Saturday Morning D&D Show, where I talk about all things tabletop RPGs, and a second channel about indie RPGs and D&D retro clones. Links to all of that down below. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you for subscribing and all of that jazz. I will see you all in the next video.